Hi, my name is Nancy Eisman, and I'm an individual marital and family therapist at Healing Hearts of Indy in Indianapolis, Indiana. And today, the topic of my video is Differentiation 205. I made a video not long ago entitled Differentiation 101, and this one's going to delve into that concept of differentiation a little bit deeper. So let's talk a little bit more about this crazy word. The more I study differentiation, the more I know that this really is where it's at. If you can work toward incorporating this concept, this way of thinking and relating into your life, you'll absolutely not only have greater peace inside your mind, but all of your interpersonal relationships will not be able to be anything but more healthy, more balanced, fulfilling, safe, calm, close, loving. These wonderful words and many more. So, to recap then, what is differentiation? The simplest description of it that I can come up with is this: knowing who you really are and having the ability to control your anxiety, or remaining non-reactive, to real or perceived fluctuations between emotional and relational closeness and distancing of others. Okay, one more time in English, right? So here it goes. I'm going to break it down for you. To not freak out when you think someone is cutting off or pulling away from you, or trying to get too close to you or too intimate. So, for example, if we exaggerate this just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see, you all know what we would term in our culture today as commitment phobes, right? They have anxiety over someone getting too close. So, what about the person who chases after the commitment phobe? They have fears about being alone. Well, how about if we make that just a little bit less obvious and we talk about, what about a husband that avoids or hates deep, connected, intimate conversations? Well, I'm just not wired that way. Well, what about a wife who is lonely and pining for attention? These are both examples of anxiety about closeness and distance as well. And we all have this going on inside of us to some extent. So I've been working on this inside myself now for quite a while, and I'm here to tell you, controlling this anxiety inside yourself is so not an easy thing to pull off. I am just not even kidding. It's really hard. I mean, first, it takes an awareness of what it is and when you're doing it, and which that in and of itself is no small feat. And then you have to be able to act counterintuitively to how you've always acted while protecting yourself from emotional wounding. It's an unlearning of your learned defensiveness and facing your worst fears head on at the same time. You literally have to overcome the natural protective instincts of the most powerful part of your brain. It's sometimes referred to as your lizard brain or your reptilian brain. And I'll have a video coming out on that topic pretty soon as well. But for today, let's work a little deeper on this notion of differentiation and move toward a better understanding of what it looks like. I attended a training given by a local expert on differentiation, Jerry Wise. And in that presentation, he gave a multifaceted definition that describes the 5 characteristics of self-differentiation. And I want to share those with you and kind of go into a little bit of detail about those. So here they are. The first one, a sense of my own limits and the limits of others. When I work on this with my clients, I talk about their yard. I talk about this is your yard and this is his yard or her yard, and this is the amount of space that the amount of relational space that you get. Well, it's a clear understanding of where I end or where my yard ends and where someone else's begins. It's a respect for the right of others to be exactly the way they are, and refusing to allow others to intrude upon my own rights, which are defined from within rather than as defined by adapting to please others. So the second characteristic is clarity about what I believe. What would I die for? And what would I not die for? What's not worth it? Of what am I certain? And of what am I not so certain? Who am I? What am I passionate about? Finding a clarity about yourself and who you are and what you believe. That's the second characteristic. The next one, the third one, is the courage to take stands. Being differentiated involves having quite a bit of courage. You have to define where you stand and what you believe in, even in the face of disapproval, and refusing to give in to another when it's a matter of principle. It's the capacity to stand firm in the face of strong reactions. These can be examples from your family of origin. Those are the hardest ones, right? For example, you can't think, act, or feel that way and be a part of this family. Well, being able to take your stand when it's a matter of principle says, and being differentiated says, you're allowed to think how you think about that, and I'm allowed to think how I think about that. And you're okay, and I'm okay. The fourth one is the ability to stay on course. Resolve to follow through toward a vision in spite of any sabotage. It's an emotional and a spiritual stamina to stick with a lofty goal and not let others' reactions change your course. In other words, it's a fancy way of saying being true to yourself. And the last one is staying connected in spite of it all. Maintaining a relatively non-reactive give and take with those who are reacting to you. It's easier said than done. It's resisting the impulse to attack or cut off from those who are most reactive to you. It's the ability to hold still, relationally speaking. Being able to not engulf others or run from them. In other words, not close the distance and not increase the distance as well. It takes a little practice to be able to feel it, but once you know what to look for, it becomes pretty easy to spot. So the first three of these have to do with self-definition. The last two have to do with self-regulation. Both are necessary for a healthy relationship. Definition of self is a lifelong process in which we can only take small steps at any one time. The essential capacity one must develop is that of self-regulation, taking responsibility for the management of one's own anxiety and reactivity. I might add here too one more characteristic necessary for achieving some differentiation, and that is having a tolerance for the discomfort of growth. Growing and changing are uncomfy. Facing your worst fears head on, let's face it, that's not pleasant. Also, the place between where you are now and where you're going, that place in the middle, that place is labeled confusion. Most people don't like the feeling of confusion. It's not pleasant. Nevertheless, a tolerance for a time of confusion will allow you to move through this process to a place of peace. Nowadays, most of the time, I can call myself out when I'm under the influence of my issues or wounds by admitting Well, that clearly was not my most differentiated moment. Yep, it takes a long time to get the hang of it, and even then, you still slip up sometimes. While I've been working on this change in me for several years now, and have a lot of really good successes, I still have my moments. Oh boy, do I have my moments. Just is. So then, you ask, perhaps, why bother? This sounds like a slow, arduous process. Well, yeah, it is. But the more I study and the more I learn about this, the more I know that self-differentiation is the completely worthy goal. And it's so incredibly powerful when it comes to inner and relational peace. It's lifelong, it's difficult. It's not about how-to lists. Rather, it's about hearing and learning from experiences and insights, followed by a readiness to grow and change. Even small changes can make a huge difference in relationships and in your mind. Changing your life's focus and paradigm to a goal of continued differentiation will alter, for the better, both how you feel on the inside and how you interact and love others. Well, that's what I have for you today. If you like this video, please feel free to share it via social media or forward it to a friend. If you would like to work on this further and in more depth, email me at Nancy, Nancy, at healingheartsofindy.com, and I will be happy to help you set an appointment. Thanks for your support.